What's up, guys? It's Baseball Nerd back with another YouTube video. Today we're going to be going into the hardest throwers of all time, hardest pitchers, whatever you want to call it. Just guys that threw gas throughout their career, some of the best pitchers to ever do it. And I know nowadays you can get into looking at some of these pitchers, and a lot of pitchers throw hard. It seems like every guy coming out of college now sits 99. So I understand that, and there's definitely guys like Dustin May, Brusdar Graterol, a lot of these young up-and-coming guys, Michael Kopech, that throw gas, Nate Pearson. And so, yes, technically going off of miles per hour and stuff like that, they can be very close to this list or on this list. But I'm just going over guys that throughout the span of baseball have been known as some of the hardest throwers in the game and kind of made a name for themselves throwing hard or stuff like that. And they've been great pitchers either so far in their career or throughout their career when they did play and were known for throwing hard. So we'll get right into the list, but before we do, please like, subscribe, and turn on the notifications if you like baseball content. We'll have a lot more of it throughout this offseason, so we'll get right into it. One of the older guys on the list, we have Walter Johnson. And Walter Johnson never technically recorded a throw over 100 miles per hour, but he lived and played at a time with no instruments measuring the speeds, so it's really hard to say. It's more, hearsay why he threw hard or how he threw hard. But there's some quotes. There's a quote right here by Ty Cobb talking about how hard he threw. And so it's kind of by word of mouth for going over Walter Johnson. But when some of the greatest hitters in the game say that you blew the ball by them, they didn't see it, or it's the hardest pitcher I've ever faced, stuff like that, it kind of puts a relative, gives you a little bit of a measurement and gets a slightly less accurate, but an idea of how hard someone threw. He ended his career, though, as the all-time strikeout king, which obviously is broken 55 years after he said it by Nolan Ryan. But he still holds the most shutouts, and that's 110 games he shut out. So the dude was a beast pitcher besides just throwing hard. Next, we got Bob Feller, another guy who threw really hard. His speed was originally against, they didn't do, obviously, a radar like they have nowadays. They had a Harley-Davidson drive, and I think got a second or 10-second head start. And then he threw his pitch. It was determined that his pitch was around 98.6 miles per hour. It was a device that he threw it through, I'm pretty sure. Later methods said that he threw 104. So later they kind of used some sabermetrics and different things to break down his throw and his fastball, and said that he threw around 104.
Hey guys, here's a quick quote from the guy that scouted Bob Feller originally, talking about his fastball, what it looked like coming out of his hand, and just a brief description of it.
Cool thing about Bob Feller that I found when I was looking up his speed is that when Japan bombed Pearl Harbor, he enlisted right away and stopped playing baseball professionally and demanded to also not just be, part of the military, but wanted to be on the front lines. And served as a gunner on the USS Alabama, and then returned to baseball after World War II and kept doing the things he was doing before baseball. And there's been a lot of stories of guys like this, but just had to throw this on there because Bob Feller is one of the hardest throwers of all time. Next, we got Steve Dalkowski. Not sure how to pronounce his name, but a lot of quotes on this guy too. Guy that I don't hear mentioned a lot in being one of the flamethrowers throughout baseball. And but a lot of these guys obviously had good things to say about him that you'll see up on the screen. So mainly by word of mouth, but he's rumored to have averaged around 104, which if he sat 104, I highly doubt he did. But if he did sit 104, it's one of the hardest throwers ever by far. And the crazy thing about him is he was 5'11", 175 pounds, and I'm a pretty skinny guy. I'm 6 foot, maybe I'm 6 foot 3/4, but we'll go 6 foot. And I weigh 165 pounds, so not very big. So he's a little shorter than me, a little heavier than me, but still a pretty skinny, small dude. So that's crazy that he threw that hard for being that size. Next, we have a guy which everybody will say they knew this was coming. Everybody knows he's probably the hardest thrower of all time, was recorded as the hardest thrower of all time. That's Nolan Ryan. He was still throwing 96 miles per hour on his fastball at age 46 and throwing complete games. This is one of the craziest things to me, is not only was he recorded as having 108.1 mile per hour on a Doppler radar gun, but that's the fastest recorded pitch ever on that gun. So that's a crazy stat right there. That's the hardest that anyone's ever thrown. But the crazy thing to me is what he did throughout his entire career. He threw that hard, or slightly less, all the way till the end of his career. And there's a guy we're going to mention later on that's very similar to Nolan Ryan and how his career trajectory has gone, throwing hard, being able to throw harder as the game goes on and stuff like that. It's crazy to see that. There's a guy who had a story about watching his second to last career start ever, and he was at the game, and he said that he was watching him throw, and it seemed like the whole game he was just throwing harder and harder. Every inning he came out throwing harder and harder. So that's crazy to me at 46 to be able to do that. He also holds the career strikeout record, 5,714 strikeouts, and he has the most no-hitters with 7. Dude was a beast. He not only had one of the fastest fastballs ever, if not the fastest, he had one of the nastiest curveballs with a ton of break and a huge speed differential. So just one of the nastiest pitchers of all time. I know a lot of guys around my dad's era or in between me and my dad's generations just love Nolan Ryan and they idolized him. He's kind of like the pitcher of that generation. So that's really cool to hear stories about him and how he pitched and not only just threw hard, but to be able to throw that hard and then break off a nasty curveball, one of the nastiest of all time. That's pretty cool. Next, we got Randy Johnson, and this dude is the opposite of Steve Dalkowski. He is 6'10". The dude was huge. He was really skinny. He was really tall, though, and he looked really mean, and just kind of used all the leverage and length he had to throw hard. He threw hard. He was obviously a lefty. That's another cool thing. Not many of these guys on this list are lefties. There's a lot of right-handed power pitchers. He's a lefty that did it. Kind of a little sidearm action. Not complete sidearm, but pretty much at a different angle than most of these guys that threw over the top. He had control problems in the beginning of his career. Cool story. But he talked to Nolan Ryan. Nolan Ryan offered to help him, and he mentioned to him about worrying about where his front foot landed and not worrying about his arm and stuff like that, and to focus more on his lower body, and that really helped him. He did throw 100 miles per hour, but he did not sit as high as some of these other guys. Like I said, Nolan Ryan sitting 96 in his last season is pretty insane, being a 46-year-old man. So he could have been playing league softball, rec softball somewhere, but instead he was throwing 96 at the major league level, still blowing it by 20-year-olds and stuff like that. So yeah, he did throw 100, but not as often as some of these other guys. And slider was supposed to be one of the nastiest pitches that he threw and one of the nastiest pitches in baseball. People talk about Mariano Rivera's cutter, obviously Nolan Ryan's fastball, Randy Johnson's slider, one of the dirtiest. So I know this isn't a video about dirtiest pitches, but that just goes in there to add along with his fastball being so fast. Finished second with the most strikeouts in history, 4,875, and 5 Cy Youngs, which is second only to Roger Clemens. Roger Clemens is on my Hall of Fame video if you want to check that out, my Hall of Fame ballot. But yeah, this just shows that some of these guys that threw the hardest also had really great careers besides just throwing hard. So that's really cool to see. And the last starting pitcher we have on this list is Justin Verlander. Still an active player, just won a World Series not too long ago. Was hurt last year, sadly, but is supposed to be back at some point this next season, and it'll be awesome to see him back. He kind of, with the Tigers was super dominant, and then kind of started to slow down, and then he saw a huge resurgence with the Astros and is throwing hard again, throwing nasty pitches. He sits around 94 to 102 throughout his career, with his fastball curveball combo kind of being reminiscent of Nolan Ryan. I've seen a lot of comparisons of that, especially when I was looking up these stats and stuff like that. So Justin Verlander, another guy that throws super hard and is just an overall really great pitcher, a guy I actually really like to watch, and so awesome there. Next, we have a couple relievers, just like a kind of handful, not as in depth. I don't really have as many stories or articles or quotes about these guys, but just some relievers. Aroldis Chapman, obviously, have to say him, because Nolan Ryan with the 108.1 mile per hour is the fastest recorded fastball, but it's not modern recording. It's not off of the best technology. It's not 100% accurate. So his 108 obviously could be a little off. And Aroldis Chapman has the fastest recorded fastball in the modern era with the right technology, and that's 105.1, just straight gas. It's so you can kind of take it with what you want. You can go Nolan Ryan and say, it's fairly accurate, we'll give him the 108, or you can give Chapman, we know for sure it was 105.1, that's the fastest. And like I said, some of the older guys, the Walter Johnsons, Bob Feller, I feel like it's hard to believe that they could throw harder than some of the newer guys just because of size and all this, the videography stuff that they can break down and stuff like that. I feel like guys nowadays have such a huge advantage compared to those guys. So I feel like it's hard to believe, but you never know. Some of those guys could have been pumping over 100. So Aroldis Chapman, he's known as being one of the hardest throwers, closers in baseball. Next, we have Joel Zumaya. Zumaya? might get crap for not knowing how to pronounce this name, but he threw 104.8 in a game for the Detroit Tigers. Right-handed relief pitcher. I don't know a lot about him. Just another guy, another closer, another relief guy that threw super hard in his career. Mark Waller's next, 103 miles per hour. That's a super fast fastball. 103, and he's just getting barely mentioned at the bottom of the relievers. Neftali Feliz, 103.4. He threw that in 2010. So 10 years ago, he threw 103.4. And then the last guy I'm going to mention here is still pitching in professional baseball and is very young and could even beat his own record, which is only 0.1 miles per hour below Chapman's 105.1 record. And that is Jordan Hicks, who threw 105 in 2018. I kind of feel like he may come back in the next couple years and beat out Chapman for the hardest thrower in baseball. Hardest pitcher in baseball. This dude's fastball is insanely fast, and he, like I said, he is so young, so you don't know how much more he can grow. Probably not grow, but put on weight or change his mechanics, do a lot of different stuff. He could add on miles per hour. I feel like Chapman's probably not going to come back in the next couple years and blow out 108 or 107 or something like that. So that's my list of the hardest throwers of all time. There's obviously guys that could have made this list, like I said, Nate Pearson, Michael Kopech. There's a lot of young guys, Dustin May, Brusdar Graterol, a lot of guys that throw hard nowadays. So if I wanted to do that and just do by miles per hour, I could have included 20 dudes that are pitching right now under 25, which is just insane. It just talks about how insane the game is and how skilled you have to be to play right now. But that's my list of just overall historical hard throwers. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please like, subscribe, turn on notifications, leave a comment, say whatever you want below about my mispronunciations or anything like that. Thank you guys. See you next time.